thanks for joining us today. You might have missed probably one of the more important events to take place in the Brattleboro area this spring. It was the TEDxSIT conference. And to explain it to us, and especially to me, is to my left, Kirsten French, to my right, Ria Schroff. They are both students at SIT. And ladies, thank you for the opportunity, first of all. I was really unsure whether this was a local event, a national event, and just let me know what it was and what you were trying to do.
Absolutely. Well, TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design, and TED itself is a combination of an online collection of talks, and also is a global conference that's held every year. So that would be the global part that you were talking about. TEDx, the X stands for independently organized, and so there are TEDx conferences that are held all over the world, run by individuals, groups, students, communities, individual people. And so we applied for and were approved for a license from TED to independently run our own TEDx conference here in Brattleboro.
So this was student-run and organized?
Entirely.
This was entirely student-run. The idea came up when a group of us got here sometime in September last year, and we were just thinking about our involvement in the Brattleboro community, our connection to the community as students, as global citizens. A lot of us come from different parts of the world, and finding a way to really ground ourselves in the community that we're learning from and we're taking so much from. And a lot of us had heard of TED.com and had heard talks by other speakers, and it seemed like the perfect forum to bring together what we saw as very important elements of our community: students from SIT, Brattleboro community members, people from other educational institutions around us. And so the forum was really good for us because TED really helps with giving very specific guidelines to anyone who wants to organize a TEDx event. And so there's a certain consistency across TEDx events all over the world that help you organize it, regulate it, and just spread those ideas.
With that in mind, what did this one involve for subject matter, different speakers, that sort of thing?
Our theme for the day was From Ideas to Action. And so we had 7 speakers, several local, a couple, one from SIT, a professor, a BUHS student, a professor from Marlborough Graduate Institute, as well as a recent graduate of that institute. And then also some people we had a speaker from California, one from New York, so sort of all over, and then also had performances throughout the day interspersed with local SIT students and local Brattleboro performers as well.
So, from what I understand, this was incredibly well attended and even streamed over the internet.
It was streamed as far away as India and Australia, actually.
We had about 100 attendees at the main event, and we had 4 community partners in town where we streamed it first. So we streamed it at SIT Graduate Institute, at Brattleboro Union High School, the Putney School, and the Marlborough Graduate School. And then we have, just because of where we come from and where we've been, we're a learning community and SIT community all over the world, and so we have friends in Australia and in India who also set up their own viewing parties and watched the event being streamed live as we watched it here.
So, who did you have as speakers for the day-long event? Any noteworthy people who would find Brattleboro a unique stop on their journey?
We definitely wanted to make sure that we highlighted local talent, local knowledge, and just local awesomeness. We have been amazed at the people that we've met here in our 9 months, and we hear of, through our studies and through people we meet, a lot of times we look outside the local context at global speakers, at people who are making change, at people who are organizing social movements and inspiring those around them. And just through our classes and through living in this community, we found a lot of them here and decided to highlight a lot of them amongst our speakers. Tatsushi Arai is a professor of conflict transformation at SIT and has worked extensively on the summer peacebuilding programs and on international peacebuilding work as well, a component that he really brings into his classroom work. He recently has been working in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and his work became much more relevant after the news of the death of Osama bin Laden, and that was the subject of his talk at TEDxSIT, and it was very well received. It raised a lot of questions and continued discussion for days after the event. And we specifically chose our speakers tying into our theme, From Ideas to Action, with the story that they all had to tell about how one person can definitely have an impact with their actions, and how it is possible to transform ideas that you have, ideas that other people may find too wild or ahead of their times, and ways to put them into action, primarily which involve really rallying the support of your community around you. And we really wanted TEDxSIT to be a community building event to bring people together. And I think we accomplished that because there were a lot of connections made at the event. People heard speakers talk about topics that were near and dear to their heart. They really reached out. Some connections were even made during this week when some of the speakers were still around. People have been talking about collaborating on potential playback theater work for people living with differences with the New England Theater, and maybe some people from New York theater companies. So it was very positive, and people did realize that they could take ideas that had just been sitting in their mind for, a couple of months, a couple of years, and find people who could bring those into action.
It's interesting, just an observation that the world has been changing extremely fast in the last 15 years. And I know that for those of us who've been around even 40 and 50 years plus, it's moving very fast. How do people just coming out of graduate school like yourselves handle it?
I think we dive right in and get involved doing things like this event that allow us to become engaged in the conversation that's where we're at right now.
We actually had a really interesting moment on Saturday night, on May 7th, we had a dinner for a lot of our speakers after the rehearsal, and we just sat and talked to them and had some time to get to know them better. And the husband of one of the speakers is about 70 years old and has been involved in social change theater for almost all his life. And he asked a group of us sitting at the table, whether it was all right for those of the people in his generation who had been activists, who had worked towards peace movements all their life, whether it was okay for them to sit back and take a step back and let the next generation go ahead, and whether it was time to turn over the reins. And a lot of us on that table, we were ready for it. And I think what we told him was, we have the energy, we have the passion, and especially at this point in time, the world is a smaller place for us. We know people across the globe. We know people in different corners, maybe more than my parents or my grandparents knew at their age. And so we definitely are leveraging the power of community and connection on a larger scale. What we can always benefit from is just listening to other people's experiences, listening to what they went through, listening to the lessons they learned, and being mentored and being supported in taking risks, in doing new things. This was a huge conference that, a lot of people really thought we may not be able to pull off, given the magnitude, given how we had to raise funds from scratch, go around asking for community sponsors. And we did it. We were full-time graduate students. We all had personal lives for a certain amount of time, but we did it. And a lot of it was by supportive professors, by people who shared their experiences in organizing other movements and galvanizing community support. And so I really think that times are changing, and that's happening by us learning from each other.
So that means that my generation should get out of the way?
No.
Absolutely not.
No, you should still be there, but just watch over.
Okay. So I'm just still trying to get a handle on this. Granted, the more hands, the better. And we just need to work through, I guess especially on the older generation's part, realizing that we need to accept you as equals with different skills.
Exactly.
Just another one of those differences we all need to work through as a society, as citizens of the world.
Definitely.
So how much money did you raise for all this?
Well, you probably can answer that better.
As part of the TED movement, again, part of their guidelines are that small community events should not accept cash donations for more than $5,000, because the idea is not to put on a corporate event but to cover the basic costs. And so we were fortunate to receive funding from the SIT Student Association and some of the student groups for up to about $3,500, and we raised about $2,500 of in-kind donations, and so that included food, drink, and snacks, tea and coffee from Mocha Joe's, from the Works, from the Grafton Village Cheese Factory, from a lot of local community partners. We had the New England Youth Theater was very generous in reducing the cost of our rent and using the entire space for a day and for the day before. A lot of other companies gave us a huge discount in ordering printed material, in ordering publicity materials that we use for the event. So we had a lot of it was in-kind support from the community.
Wow, it's good to know that this community is very supportive. It has been with a lot of causes. It's nice to know that maybe the philosophical difference between the top of the hill where SIT is located and the community at large isn't that big after all.
No, it's not.
That was one of our hopes in coordinating this event, was to sort of bridge that gap and to show that there's not that the hill is much bigger than it needs to be.
So, both of you are graduate students. This one-year graduate program, or?
It's 1 year of on-campus classwork, and then students have up to 3 or 4 years to complete an off-campus internship phase where they put the skills that they've learned into practice. They're either working in a full-time job or a volunteer position, and during that time you would also choose a research topic that interests you and write a small thesis and then come back and present it on campus and graduate.
The reason why I say is because both of you say there'll be future TEDxSIT events. Where does the institutional memory come from to pull them off if people like yourselves are not here?
What our hope is that there will be future community events, future events organized by and for the community. TEDx and TED is but one forum, it's one format. The inspiration for TED actually came from hearing about a community events organized last year by an SIT student that was attended by some community and students. And just having been here in Brattleboro for such a long time, we are seeing so many different forums for bringing together community members, so many different organizations that already work to do such great work. And the idea is to open up the forums and to open up these channels of communication between students, between not-for-profit organizations in town, educational institutions, and leveraging their power of connections to organize those events. And so classes are getting over in maybe a week or 2 weeks. We definitely are leaving. But as part of the organizing team, we're making sure to sit down, conduct evaluations among ourselves, among our participants, and take the important lessons learned and leave it behind with future students who are going to be here next year, and with the school if a future community event wants to be organized. But again, we should stress that this was a student-run event, and so SIT was the educational institution, but it's up to students to decide if TEDx is the right format to go ahead, or if there's another sort of community platform that they'd like to reach out to.
It's good to know that there'll be annual events potentially out there bringing the community and SIT together. What's been your experience here in Brattleboro, both of you, over the past 9 months or so, in trying to figure out what you're going to be doing with your graduate studies and also getting a feel for the community as part of that?
The typical SIT model is starting in September, ending in May, and then going into your off-campus phase. There's a small group of students every year who start in January, and I actually was one of those students last year. So started in January of 2010 and technically ended my time here this last December, but chose for several reasons to come back for another semester. One of them was in order to work on TEDxSIT, wanting to be involved in that, and so have had the opportunity to sort of see the relationship between SIT and the community from several different angles, and have seen a really big need for more events like this or smaller things that bring together the two communities, and have heard about in the past a much closer relationship between SIT and Brattleboro, and that sometime in the last several years that sort of took a couple steps back, and was a part of the community event last year and saw the potential for these relationships to be rebuilt, and so really was excited this year to be a part of the planning for that and getting to know the Brattleboro community more, to see their phenomenal reaction and support to our event, and just sort of learning what goes into organizing a community that way.
Nice.
I have a very strong and personal connection to Vermont. This is my 5th year being here. I actually went to school at Middlebury College. I'm from India originally, born and raised. And
I thought you were from New Hampshire.
And I came to Middlebury in 2005, and I went to school there, and just being in Vermont has been fantastic, mostly because everyone who I've met is very worldly, or at least has an insatiable curiosity to learn more about people from other places, even if it's from other places in the US or other parts of the world, and to work constructively with that information. And so I was very excited to be back in Brattleboro after graduating from college, and I have not been disappointed. It's this spirit of activism, it's this entrepreneurial spirit of organizing at the local community level and using that power, using the power of the people to just go ahead and make change. And so TEDxSIT was truly a wonderful way to cap off my time in Brattleboro. It showed me and showed everyone else that I've been around the power that, a group of students have, but that it's accessible, that the community is accessible, that we're all working towards the same cause. We just have different ways of doing it. And those are the memories I'm going to take away from here.
So what are your off-campus projects going to be? What's next for world change or community change?
Well, I will be kind of sticking around here working for World Learning and SIT's Youth Peacebuilding and Leadership programs. We'll be working with the Governor's Institute of Vermont for a program at the beginning of the summer, and then we have several programs that bring Iraqi students to the United States, and so I'll be traveling with that program this summer, training high school students from Iraq to become peace builders and leaders in their communities.
Okay, and you?
In exactly 1 month, I will have landed in the Dominican Republic for the 2nd time. I worked there before coming to SIT, and I'll be working as a program coordinator for an organization that works to provide education and healthcare and overall leadership programs for young girls aged 9 to 16. I was a Spanish major in college. That is my passion. I've been in this community before, so I'm really excited to go back and use the skills I've learned here and work at a more in-depth and nuanced level. And then I'm hoping to come back next May, graduate, present my thesis, and then I'll be going back to India and use the skills that I've learned here and my home community.
So it sounds like both of you are really working on the ground level in making sure that peace building is person by person.
Definitely.
I like that.
Definitely.
Now, in thinking about that, what can we as a Brattleboro community do better to help your future counterparts who end up on the Hill at SIT get their job done better?
That's a good question.
I mean, we don't want to be seen as boorish hosts by any stretch of the imagination, although sometimes we may seem that way to the outsider.
I've never had that experience, I would say. I think continuing to be responsive to events like this, and it was really wonderful to see the response. We weren't able to use Brattleboro community members quite as much in the planning of our event this year as we would hope would be the case in the future, because I think we want it to be more than SIT students putting on an event for the Brattleboro community, but for that collaboration to really start at the beginning planning stages of the events, as far as working with the community members and SIT students to put that on. And so I think as we get better at this, as we figure out how this works and what steps to take, that involvement would be wonderful.
And I think we've just been, a lot of the conversations on campus with other students have resulted in hearing this need for students wanting to be involved in a lot of the efforts that are happening in the community. Brattleboro is great at organizing community events. Strolling of the Heifers is coming up. The Slow Living Summit, Farm to School just happened on campus. And I think one way where we see a possible collaboration for the future is, using the skills that SIT students are at least learning in nonprofit management, in designing and delivering programs. A lot of students are willing to work and contribute to community events just to get the experience and help strengthen the community. And so, like Kirsten said, being responsive to students' needs, to wanting to get involved, reaching out to students when these community events are being organized, because there may be a lack of communication sometimes where, what's being planned here and what's being planned at SIT might be very similar. It's just that the word doesn't get up the hill. So just, I think both parties can work on that and are working on that, especially in the aftermath of this event, just to see what skills we can draw on each other.
Well, you both have shown that you have an incredible ability to organize and work through whatever minor difficulties that there may be. Congratulations on your success with the event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gosh, so if this were a perfect world, what would your perfect job at the end of all your education be? What would you want to both do?
Doing exactly this, organizing more events that bring together community members. I think one thing I've realized throughout my life and learning from other people is that you don't always have to have the answers, but someone else does. And if you can bring that person to where the answers need to be brought, you can put people in contact with each other, they'll do magical things.
And you, Kirsten?
I've actually realized through this process as well how much I love logistics and detailed planning and coordinating in that way. And I definitely have a passion for working with youth in peace building. And so I want to take that learned passion that I have and apply it to program design and management of youth programs, peace building.
Well, I certainly have learned a lot over the past few minutes, and thank you for educating an old dog. Good luck in the rest of your studies, and good luck in what you plan to do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Our guests have been Ria Schroff and Kirsten French. And this is Tim Johnson trying to bridge the gap between Brattleboro's best-kept secret and the rest of the community. May we work a lot closer together in the future. Thanks for watching.